Yep. So some very light dust, but very close.
And then they're all going to be roughly there.
Yeah, very
time
close.
to correct.
And the target is almost sideways, so.
Okay, well, that's what 5 in a row looked like.
Yeah.
And of course out there they've got the GoPro that's listening to them too.
Sure, yep.
Coming in there. But you can't make any corrections for that once you start.
That's right.
Not the best for your barrel either. Okay.
I'll zoom back.
Okay.
Radio.
G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. That was the video of what we did last week, shooting this 300 Win Mag out at 3,000 yards. Now, I chose to do a little bit of talk about it because I thought it was a pretty good example of, listen, not necessarily the right thing to do with your rifle, but a pretty good example of my form of shooting, or some advantages to my form of shooting, and a little bit of explanation that goes with it. And I suppose a little bit of changing what, or informing some people beyond their perceptions of what they're seeing. I'm sure that most people would realise that to shoot 5 in a row like that in fast shooting, in rapid fire, and to get a group that looked like that, which if that target had not, if I put the clip on that target properly and it hadn't popped off, then probably a couple of them would have been on target. But maybe none, but it looked like a couple would have been, maybe even 3, but at least 1 would have been on target in that. And the group was very small, probably back down in somewhere not too beyond 30-inch group at 3,000 yards with rapid fire. To start off with, not the best thing for a rifle. The temperature that you're putting in your throat of the barrel when with just bang 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 very rapidly like that is quite excessive. But over just 5 and out of not 100 rounds or anything like that, no damage was done, but still something that you could be concerned with. And then also how the barrel's dealing with that temperature and all that sort of stuff. We can talk about groups and all that sort of stuff in temperature. I don't find too much of an issue in that sort of stuff. But still, what it did show is that without resetting to each shot, without, obviously there's a nice smaller window of time where wind can't change too much and that type of thing, doesn't mean it doesn't change, but it sort of showed a real consistency, even though there's obviously from your preloading and all those bits and pieces of how you set up your rifle in whatever form, you're actually rushing things at that sort of level. So, I thought I'd use that moment to explain why that group is as good as it is, and also why some reasons that people might think are not so. And I suppose the first bit I'm talking about there is a lot of people would presume that my loads are extremely thoroughly worked out, and that's why you see such consistent speeds. When I do measure speeds, I don't really bother with speeds a lot. I use them to start off with. Other than that, I don't really bother too much. Did a little bit of the speed stuff on the channel just out of interest sake, showing people what it was, but it's not something that concerns me. ESs and SDs and all that sort of stuff, and trying to get this speed to perfect is not something I focus on unless I'm dealing with a problem. And load developments, I've said this from the beginning, so most people haven't heard it, I haven't said it for years now, but I don't do a lot with load development, or I do almost nothing. What I do is when I first set up a round, I go for because it's ELR that we shoot, I select a heavier option that I can make run at a decent speed and fit in enough powder as much as possible without overpressuring. And I do mean as much as possible. I want to run as close to compressed or into a compressed charge because I believe there's some consistencies created out of filling the chamber up. filling the capacity of the round up. Filling that up means there's no room for the powder to be forward or back or an air gap in different places, that sort of stuff. It's full. So to the level of compressed, some are quite compressed, not to the point where I'm bending things trying to get it in there, but quite compressed. Running a slower powder to suit the heavier bullet. And I think there's some little advantages I get in that place with what I do. But then I'm looking at my primers, I'm looking at lifting my bolt lift, the primer pocket expansion, all those things to make sure I'm not overpressuring. And that's all I do. I don't go through a ladder test. I don't go through a seating depth. I don't go through those things. I run a seating depth which suits where I start, and that there's some logic to that. In some faster rounds, I'll tend to run a little bit more jump. In some of these rounds, these are set at 20 thou. That's where I pretty much started. Well, did a little bit of testing many years ago, over 10 years ago, with the 300 Win Mag. And ended up with 20 thou worked and everything worked. I did change powder loads to, I think I was running a bit more, and then I pulled it back when I found that I started to get some I've forgotten what it was, whether it was a tight bolt lift or it was a expanding primer pockets, but I changed it back to where I'm comfortable, and I've been there and I've been running like that for a long time. But that's it. I haven't changed anything. With new batches of powder, with new batches of bullets, with all the bits and pieces, I've not changed anything. Even to the level when I changed my barrel length, I found that still worked fine and I left it there. I'm not trying to pursue the ultimate performance. If it's working fine, it's not overpressuring, I'm good with it. And as I've always said, what I do is I get a round that works and then I make it shoot, which sounds like a real fob off, I suppose, to some people, but it's not. It's what I do. And I suppose what I mean by what I make it shoot, I should say in the last bit of the rounds, I've probably also gone to a level where because I'm very time poor, I have, where I would previously do up a load, I go through the whole process, do the prep, do that sort of stuff, and then I'd gradually use a box of ammo over various shoots, whether that's one shoot or 2 shoots or 10 shoots, whatever it is. I'd use the box of ammo and then really do the whole lot. What I've been doing for the last 3 or 4 years is if I shoot 10 rounds or 6 rounds or 20 rounds or 15 rounds or whatever it is, then I will just go through and prep those and put them back to the same place. Which means I can end up with some irregularity across there with powders and bits and pieces. I don't tend to find I've had an issue. I use ADI powders. With this, I use the 225, and I found it's very consistent. It is not what I would recommend for the absolute best box of ammo. I would recommend doing the whole lot and then reloading the whole lot. But like I said, time poor, and I just want to get back to where I have a fresh box of ammo, it goes back in the safe, and when I want to go out and do something, it's there ready to go. And I'll deal with whatever I've got to in that sort of level, which, listen, I don't really see an issue at all, but it's, like I said, not ideal. Well, that's the ammo you saw shooting that group with. That's it. There's, I think in this box of ammo here, I've got half of this box has never been fired. It was loaded nearly 4 to 5 years ago, and it's never been fired. I've never got to the other end. So I probably should swap it around. There's things I should do, but I suppose that's the other little bit I'll tell you about our shoots when we go out and do that sort of thing. When me and Sam go out and do this. This is before work. We have nothing in the paddock prior to work. We go out and we deal with what to deal with. We set up our target. We then go and put up our range flag. We go to the top hill. We sort out whatever the ground is. The shoot you just saw, that was the first time out there. That was a new paddock of canola that had just been cropped. We thought it was shorter. The edge of the paddock, it looked like it was shorter. When we got into the paddock, it was fairly tall. So, okay, is that going to work? Up the top of the hill, where we shoot from, well, it's not the top of the hill, it's the little knoll we live on that we shoot from. It's about 40 meters higher than our target area. It's around the neck of the woods, so it's not too much difference in height, but it is on the little edge on one of the hills on the way up to the top of the hill. And that was very grassy and grass seeds and all that sort of stuff. So all a little uncomfortable, but the first time we've been there for, 3 to 4 months. Anyway, all that sort of stuff. The shooting actually, believe it or not, is the least part of that job. I do a lot of it, very experienced at it. Sam's very experienced at her shooting as well, but at her spotting side of things, so we're very much able to click into our job. But everything else, setting it up, making sure that everything's organised, setting up all the cameras, going through that process, that's where our work is. The drone flight afterwards, that's where our time spent. The shooting gets very little time. And that's a little bit of, I suppose you could call it a skill. I'm very experienced at it. I do a lot of it. There's a lot of trigger time. There's a lot of muscle memory, whatever you want to call it, that sort of stuff. But because we're both very good at our job, we get things done in a hurry. The fast fire side of things was just been asked a lot of times, but have more than one bullet in the air, see what actually happens and that sort of stuff. And I also could see to what's actually going to happen here. Whereas I will make an adjustment to every shot, what's going to happen when I just hold the same hold? I just work out where I've got to hold in the reticle with the last shot that I've had. And then I go through the process of, I had a loaded magazine alongside, so I could just put it over there, clip it in there, and then run the trigger. Not going to get to adjust. If the winds change much, they're all going to be off target, that sort of stuff. But let's just see what actually happens. And then it all goes into the rest of it. So the back to what do I do and make it shoot? Because that's what you actually saw there. That engineering, that muscle memory, that trigger control, that everything else is what you actually saw there. It's not an amazing round. The rifle shoots like it shoots, but that's the big key. Yes, there's a little bit of making sure that my preload is the same all the time, making sure my trigger pulls is exactly the same, that I am consistent. But the biggest deal is the actual platform that I'm actually using. That's the thing that really, I believe at least, that's where I've always put my effort into it. Now I've got multiple videos on the channel which will go through how to set it up, whether it's about resisting muzzle rise or muzzle jump, or whether it's about recoil control, or how to use bipods, or how to set up a rifle, or how to set up a scope, all that sort of stuff. This, what you're looking at, has all of it. So I'm just going to do a brief rundown. If you want more of the finer details, then there's an index page on my video. I'll put a link to that down the bottom, which has links to all these bits and pieces if you want to know in detail. But basically what we're looking at. I suppose we'll go top down. To start off with, we've got a good scope. This is the Nightforce 7x35. This is the first focal plane. I prefer second focal plane, but I'm fine either way. The power side of things, I wasn't running up it. I was actually running right where it's sitting right now. So I was running 27, roughly 27 on there, just about the right sort of picture I wanted. 25 would be fine, but even 20 would work. But that made it where I was actually running it. You'll notice I've got it's the Nightforce wedge on the front. So this needed 180 MOA is what it needed to get to that 3,016 yards. 180 MOA. So I got that to start off with, this is a 60 MOA base from ULR. So it's 60, and as this is, and it gets a bit complicated, but this is effectively 120 minute of internal elevation scope. By going to a 60 MOA base means that it's then zeros at 100 yards. Where I always zeros things 100 yards. I won't get too more complicated. It is in an adjustable base, so I could have adjusted the base up and down in this air attack base. Didn't. This is all zeroed out. That could have just been lock steady like that. What I have on the front is 100 MOA Nightforce wedge. So that means I get 100 MOA out of that, and then I dialed up 80. I dialed up 85 to start off with, went down to 80, but that's what it was. So there's my 180. This one here, I was running it like factory, where you just get one or half a turn of, so 15 MOA of windage. I decided just to run with that, and I'll do my hold. I didn't need to do that. It's easier to think that way. Once you go past that, then you go into the backwards numbers and that sort of stuff. So it was a nice, easy way to do it. I do it different ways. That way is where I went. I tried that. It worked. I left. I had a hold point in my reticle, so I could just use that hold point, which is over, like I showed, just short of the 10 MOA. So that's what I did, 15 and 10. So that was the whole setup of the rifle, and that's what I needed to. On there, very easy. We are very experienced at what we do here. I'm very experienced at reeling, not just reading the wind, but also understanding what's going on up above, because obviously your trajectory of your projectile is quite high, and where both the target and us are slightly elevated to the valleys. So that means that the high winds are actually coming down lower as they go through the valleys. That means that that shot is always going to be affected by the wind that's pushing in the general direction, or in the weather reports direction. And of course, we've also got to deal with spin drift, which starts to affect even more so when you get further out. So the bullet's going to end up wandering off to the right. I allow for things, but and it won't get too much more complicated. Once I found a hold, and I would stress in people thought about how can you be consistent in wind when you've got much wind. Wind is just something you allow for. If it's inconsistent wind, that makes it hard. If it's consistent wind, listen, it's not much different than calm. It's actually sometimes even easier than when you have calm. If you have a constant strong wind versus a erratic calm, where there's light winds all over the place, it can be easier to actually lean on a bit of consistent wind than it is to just get pushed around a little tiny bit by an inconsistent calm. Okay, so anyway, that's the scope side of things. The barrel, well, this is the action we're on top of. This is a Remington 700 long range. This is the same Remington 700 action I had right from a long time ago with the standard 26-inch barrel. Shot really well, shot it out to 2 miles, did everything with it, decided to upgrade. Now this is a 29-inch barrel. This is a Medco barrel. One of my 4-port muzzle brakes on it, nothing too complicated that. Nice heavy profile. This isn't a straight profile, but still a heavy profile, but functions really nicely. 1 in 9 twist, so I could run the heavier rounds. I still came back to the 230s is where this thing performed as well as it needed to. It worked really nicely, and it's not pushing any boundaries. I tried the 250s and the 245s in Hornady and Berger, and listen, they went well, but they weren't anything really up on what I was getting out of the 230s, so I went back to my load that I've been running for 10 years. Sitting in an MDT chassis and sitting with this is my bipod system. This one I chose to use the Attack component A, which so the Attack legs. Listen, nothing really in it. They're like them if you like them. They work really well. The Atlas with the way I'm going to set them up have a little bit more extension to them, so they're a little bit easier for me to get into this sort of stuff, but still work brilliantly. I've set them up where they got this nice bit of backwards and forwards play, which is a very important ingredient for what I'm doing, and I'll go through it a bit more. These have also got solid feet. Big detail that I feel is one of the finer points of what I've got to is the solid little leg extension, but that's solid aluminium, solid hard anodized aluminium with a little nipple on it, so it's got a bit of grip, but also it rocks, it doesn't bounce. I find them a real value, and I'll get back to that. And then what I've got, we're down to our bag right at the back here. Magazine sorted out from the last shoot. It was just simply a new magazine. It was a bit tight. It was when I had a problem last time I had this rifle out. I just opened it up and got it to where it worked fine, so there's no real issues there. Magazine feed nicely. This magazine fits the overall length of my projectile, so I'll list that down there, but fits so that would feed easily. Then down the back, nothing much to see here except for this. This is the ACC chassis, running one of their weights, so there's a bit more weight in this rifle, and I'll also put on the weight on this rifle. It's reasonably heavy, and then one of my heavy bag riders on the back here. So made to do everything where it puts the weight in the right place. I've got a nice line of push. Well, I suppose I'll finish the gear. Adjustable bag base, very important ingredient in shooting with real consistency. For a one-off shot, hey, you can do it all sorts of ways. To get real consistency, a packed bag is really super important, that can do it where it's actually staying there. And the fact that I can then, with my system, adjust it, tweak it right onto target, the left and right, but also just tweak that up. So as this packs down, I can tweak and adjust it on target, make sure it's there. That is a big deal for making consistency happen. It's running off your shoulder, but the starting point is set. I'm not forcing, I'm not holding, it's set, my shoulder's just coming to it, and then it runs against my shoulder and the bag doesn't impede it. But that packed bag and a setup which is then easily adjustable where I can shot to shot. I'm not reaching forward to mess with things, I'm not going up the front here, but I can actually, if I want to, I didn't need to in that 5-shot group, but I can actually tweak down the back here very carefully and make sure I'm on, is an important ingredient. So anyway, that's a pretty good overview of the rifle. What I suppose this is all about is that what I believe is one of the ingredients to my form of shooting. I would not take away that trigger time and the amount of this sort of stuff done is very, very relevant. But I've always believed that I'm not particularly a brilliant shot or a different human in that sort of level. It's in the engineering process, it's in the physics of the process, which I believe is the most important thing. There is, as everyone who knows about shooting accuracy in any format, consistency is where that comes from. Consistency is where it's not about seeing better, it's not about having anything particularly better in the level of the physical action or the physical attributes it's got. It's much more about the consistency of it. If you can make things where when that trigger breaks, that everything behaves exactly the same every time, and as long as, yes, it was pointed accurately, you're still going to be pointing it accurately, but it's a very small part of the deal actually, and a very easy thing to do with the right sort of rig. It's the consistency of afterwards. Now, some will do it with front skids, the F-class bipods, front skids, the platform on the back there, a good bag in the back here, and then largely it's a free recoil style. Tend to be very heavy rifles and a free recoil style. So it's not completely free, but it is free for that first instance. You've got to understand that the action of the rifle is what we see. We see what it does. That's just a clue of what's going on. Because before we actually see the movement that matters has already happened. So it might buck in the air or spin around or do nothing at all, but it's actually the stuff before we can see the reaction of things. It's that stuff there that matters. So your muzzle rise is, and all the things that the rifle does, is a clue of what that was happening, but we didn't get to see it. So this is the same thing this is my concept. This is not something I can prove other than the way I shoot. Is that in a free recoil, so this means still people are shouldered up behind the rifle and that sort of stuff, but when they can't lean on it because it's just going to slide away. So it has to actually go bang and come to them, which is different to how I do things. I do things with grounded bipod feet. So these little nipples, and whether it's sitting on the mat, there's a little ridge on the front of my mats, or dirt, whatever it is, they're dug into the dirt. They're dug in, they're gripping. And then we've got a bag that's packed underneath the back here to support things for sure. But basically my collarbone, very strong bit of me, not a squishy bit, a very strong bit of me is sitting against this point here, and I'm pushing forward, I'm preloading. So that first instant when it goes bang, this rifle has something that's grabbing it. Now, there's no forward grip, there's no like when I shoot offhand where I'm holding the whole thing, but the main place where that bang is always going to push is here. But in my situation with a preloaded bipod, it's happening on the instant of the bang. My theory is, and I can't prove this at all, I sort of have shown a little bit in times gone by, is that if you have a bit of steel sitting there and you bang it, it's going to ring for a long time. You put one hand on one end of it and you bang it, then it dulls it out because that vibration disappears. Now, that's actually a long time we're talking about, that ringing and all that sort of stuff. But I have a bit the same concept. If I'm preloaded, if I'm attached firmly to this thing, on the instant it goes bang, is I'm absorbing some harmonics. As to how real that is, I can't honestly tell you. What I can tell you is, and I can show you, is the consistency and where this stuff comes from. In the simple engineering, which is, I believe, all good engineering is simple engineering. There might be lots of it. It might be complicated to understand in places, but the simple engineering of it, I'm attaching myself to the rifle. My rounds are simply full. So there's no room for irregularity through the air gap, that sort of stuff. I haven't tried to tune to a harmonic to find a place and that sort of stuff. I've ignored all that and I've gone with, I'm trying to absorb the harmonics. I've got a moderately heavy rifle. It's well bedded in whatever form, whatever the rifle is. It's got a good muzzle brake that isn't impeding things in that fashion. So there's chambers in the front here. They're wiping the air away and keeping it as clean going at the front as possible. And I'm grounding the bipod with the feet to the ground here and a well-packed bag. But then the big squishy human, although I'm attaching by my collarbone, there's all this dampening mass that goes with that collarbone, is that I'm absorbing, on that instant, I'm absorbing that harmonics. Now that's fairy tales for some people, no doubt whatsoever, but that's all I've got for the rest of it is that when the rifle goes bang, it goes straight back. So as I said, that what you see is actually afterwards, but you can see the end result of the start of things in that situation. So when this does cycle, it's straight forward and back. That's what's very important to me. My scope picture, I don't lose my scope picture. Although my eye might shut for the blink of normal going bang, I don't lose my scope picture. I don't lose the sight of my target. It stays straight on that sort of stuff. There may be clues that if I'm doing something wrong, it's going to move off target, but when I do it right, then it's just there. As I can show you in a 5-shot bang, 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 and the bullets going out there, is that there wasn't a lot of resetting and move around that process. So once again, part of my preloaded form of shooting with a grounded bipod where everything is gripped, and I then am just I'm controlling it. I'm in more control of it than in a free form style of shooting where it's more pointing, going bang, and you're there to catch it. Now, well, I can mess it up more than I'm doing, but if I do it right, you end up with a result like that. And like I said, it's not something I'll do a lot of. I thought it as a explainable, teachable, whatever it is, a learning moment, to actually point out that wasn't just a weird bit of quirky stuff to attract views. There was some requests to go with it, but there was also some stuff that I was going to learn from that too. And I was impressed with how it went. I'm impressed with this rifle. In all the forms it's been, right, by the way, right from the first day I put a Bell & Carlson stock on the Remington 700 long range. Even the round length I'm running, I think, is pretty close to the same. They had a nice long throat in those factory barrels, and all the things they did with it. It's always shot really well. I really like it, and like I said, I thought it was a worthwhile conversation to have about what I actually did with it last weekend, or last Thursday I think it was. And I thought I'd like to have a chat about it. Anyway, guys, let us know any comments you've got below. So this is a little bit longer one. I hope that all makes sense for everyone as to what we're going through there. Certainly, I believe, well, I suppose, as I've said many times, I do sell these products in the way of my bipod system, my bag rider, my adjustable bag base, that sort of stuff. But there is all components that I designed out of that simple engineering to make my shooting better, and that's why we've got them on the store, because the guys who have got them, they find the same thing. It just makes it easier to be more accurate. Anyway, guys, thank you very much for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.